You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
Hey everybody, X-Men Days of Future Past is coming to theaters this Friday, and you know what that means?
It means we really need to stick to the original, because if we talk about the sequel, we're going to bitch for half an hour about X3.
Yes, that has been our podcast history in the last couple of years, since that movie came out, The Last Stand.
Yeah.
Let's talk about The Last Stand first. No, that's not. No, actually, what it means is that I'm gonna jizz my pants because I'm so freaking looking forward to this movie.
Cool.
Yeah, no, and also, another episode of Don't F With the Original.
Why did I say cool to jizz your pants? I don't know. It's really weird.
Yeah, it would be warm. Oh, we just lost our family-friendly tag. What happened?
Oh my god.
Alright, introduce yourself, please.
Nicholas speaking, correspondent for Idiomatic.
And I'm Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic.com, and movie critic. So what we do at Don't F With the Original, aside from dirty jokes, when a sequel, remake, reboot comes out, we watch the original movie that started the franchise, and review it, and then talk about our expectations about the new film. In this case, obviously, that means Bryan Singer's 2000 movie, X-Men.
Yes.
In my head, known as Wolverine and the X-Men.
He's the fan favorite character. You need to give the fans what they want.
Alright, so quick rundown of what happens in X-Men. They explain the concept of mutants. Human beings born with super awesome abilities like shooting lasers from your eyes, telekinesis, healing factors, claws out of your thing, and less awesome powers like touching people and putting them in a coma.
Really sucks.
And they use it as an allegory for prejudice. So essentially, we start off with a big political senate where Senator Kelly is going like, we should have the Mutant Registration Act where every mutant is registered because they are living weapons, which is actually a moderately defensible point, by the way.
Somewhat.
And then the X-Men are fighting for their civil rights. And in there, the leader is Professor X, played by Patrick Stewart, who's sort of like the Martin Luther King of the X-Men community. And he wants to approach things from a peaceful perspective. And then there's the flip side of him, Magneto, played by Sir Ian McKellen, who Bryan Singer has said is the Malcolm X of the equation, but Malcolm X was considerably more peaceful than Magneto, so I don't like that comparison at all. Like,
it was a little more aggressive, but he wasn't like, let's kill everybody to get our rights.
Yeah, exactly. He was, I hate that comparison, I really do. Like, one's technically a terrorist, the other is really not.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, Magneto's plan, though, is in this first movie actually moderately peaceful, because his plan is to turn the world leaders into mutants so that they will serve the mutant interest.
Yeah.
Because this movie came out in 2000 before we realized that every Republican against gay rights is actually gay.
A lot of them, yeah.
A lot of them turned out to
No, to be honest, every time that happens on the news, that brought a giggle to my face. You're like, are you kidding me? One of the most homophobic ones is actually gay. Okay, whatever. Always a little giggle.
I'm just saying, Magneto's plan could have backfired if the X-Men weren't there to stop it. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So the story mostly focuses on Wolverine meeting Rogue, the girl who touches people and they fall into a coma, and them meeting the X-Men, and voila.
Yeah.
How did you feel about X-Men, the movie?
I liked it.
Yeah.
Mainly, the main thing I realized is the difference between that and every other origin story is that it's not an origin story. It introduces the character, but then there's a whole other movie with it. It takes very little time to introduce them. The whole movie is mostly spent on the story, and not just, how did Wolverine get his claws, or how did Rogue happen to this. No, you get a story out of it, and a good one at that. That I had not, read in any comics before, so it was also very original.
Yeah.
And that's what I really like about that movie.
That's a really good point. I think that's the advantage of the X-Men as a concept, is that, there's no origin story. They're born with it. It's like, unless you want to give a birth scene and go like, and now the bad guy, you know, like.
Yeah, but they could have made it a way on how each of them met Professor X, and how they were as a kid and how it happened, and they didn't go there.
Well, we do get Wolverine meeting Professor X, but it's well integrated into the overall plot.
Exactly.
Because, like, we reviewed Spider-Man a couple of weeks ago, and we mentioned how it's like, origin story, and then, oh yeah, bad guy.
Yeah.
Whereas here, it's very homogenous. It feels like a single entity.
Exactly.
And I think the X-Men allow for that because they're born with their powers, and it's more important to explain their socio-political status than it is to explain what their powers are.
Yeah.
Because to a certain degree, who gives a shit what their powers are?
Yeah. Whatever their power would be, they'd work in the movie, would find a way to make it work in the movie. Who cares? What's interesting about them is that, they're being discriminated against. That's what you have to deal with.
Yeah, and it's a good allegory. It works well because it's empowering to those who feel discriminated against. Because, aha, I have powers.
I guess, yeah.
In this fantasy.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're black, Asian, or gay, you don't actually have powers, so don't go out and try to fly. Just don't do it. Don't do it.
I'm just saying.
And I think what's complicated about the movie is actually selling this sort of sci-fi concept. Because it's not just a comic book concept. A comic book concept is, I gain powers, I put a mask, I fight a bad guy. This is a sci-fi concept. There's this subspecies of human beings. There's this political climate that results from it. It takes place in a not-too-distant future. Like, everything about this movie feels more like a sci-fi movie than a comic book movie.
Interesting.
And I really like that because it gives it a very different flavor than all the other comic book movies.
That is true. That's true. I kind of have my fill of comic book movies. I really pick and choose them, but I had no problem rewatching X-Men.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, like, almost to a fault, like, to a certain degree. I feel like, because I want to balance a little bit of the negative and the positive, because it's not a perfect movie, I don't find.
Okay.
And I feel that the movie almost spends too much time apologizing for its superhero concepts.
How do you mean?
Okay, so, Wolverine meets the X-Men, he's like, yeah, what's a Magneto? And that's essentially the writers winking to the audience. It's like, Magneto's a stupid name. We are aware of it.
Okay. I thought it was weird, too, because, he makes fun of their nicknames. And, Professor X, what's your nicknames? Wheels? And he explains, no, I'm Professor X. But he never explains why the hell they each have nicknames. And it's kind of one thing that, okay, can you please, answer his question?
And honestly, I think it's the writers hadn't figured out an excuse for it. Because it's a superhero conceit, and that's the reason why.
Yeah.
There's no real reason why beyond that. And the writers were like, I can't find a reason.
Is that the same reason why they made the joke about, what were you expecting in yellow spandex? When they're wearing they super tight, impossible to move in leather suits. And you're watching this thinking, yellow spandex would be better for you. You could actually move in that.
In fairness, I don't think we're supposed to know that they can't move in them, in fairness.
Okay.
But yes, it is the same phenomenon. I feel this is a screenplay that keeps apologizing for its comic book roots.
Okay.
And keeps expecting the audience not to like comic book movies, which makes sense. This was a movie that was made in the 2000s. This is one of the first comic book movies.
Yeah.
So I understand the tack they're taking, but like, every time they mention a power, they have to explain the logistics of it as if the audience couldn't understand that, oh, this guy can fly. I was like, well, he can fly because of this and that. It's like, what's your power? I have telekinesis. I can move objects with my mind. Oh, cool. I'm a critic. I point out awkward stilted lines.
Nice.
The screenplay is constantly going like, yes, I know, it comes from a comic book. I'm sorry, which is like, it's not in vogue anymore now. Comic books is cool. And it is distracting in this day and age when audiences today, we're like, Thor, I come from Asgard, and we have technology and a cosmic cube, and my hammer can't be lifted by anyone but me. Why? Because, bitch. It's...
Yeah.
This is the era we live in today. So you watch X-Men from the year 2000, you're like, all right. No, it's okay. You can be a comic book movie. Stop apologizing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of surprising they didn't give special explanation for each and every one of their powers. Like he shoots laser from his eyes because he can absorb the light from the sun and gather it in his cells, and eventually it gets. He's like, no, it's just I was almost when I mentioned that, I'm just looking for other explanation of where did they start explaining? I was like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah, well, like they show Wolverine healing fast when he's in northern Alberta, where apparently light is always blue.
Yeah,
And it's always winter while it's summer in New York.
something like that. Yeah.
And he heals, and then later on they have a Jean Grey explains like he seems to have regenerative powers, like his healing is faster and it limits his age. It's like I don't give a shit. I saw him heal. I got it. I don't care.
Yes, but they don't know it.
And I find that just slows the movie down a little bit,
Yeah.
But that's a minor qualm, because otherwise I find, in terms of dealing with actual characters instead of just action figures,
Yeah.
the movie does a great job.
I know you're not also only interested in the good guys. The bad guys also have their own agenda. They're really cool, and with their their manipulation as well. Like how they get Rogue to leave the mansion at one point. Mystique shows up, and it's like, you need to get out of here. Everybody's freaking out, and you're like, wow, their plan's getting pretty good, and you're pretty interested in their schemes and what they're doing as well.
Yeah, and it helps that their motivations is so defendable. Like Mystique going to Senator Kelly, who's a raging bigot.
Yeah.
It's like, and with too much power, it's like, people like you are the reason I was afraid to go to school. And it's like, oh, poor kid, like that must have been hard.
Yeah.
I understand why you're angry. I understand why you're joining Magneto, especially since Magneto just wants to turn people into mutants. That doesn't seem so bad.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right. The dynamic between the bad guys and the good guys. I mean, I love the Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart dynamic. This sort of distant friends thing going on.
Yeah.
Where every time they meet, instead of fight, they go like, hey, can I change your mind, please?
Yeah.
Can I, can we not do this? Can we just have a cup of coffee and play chess, I like that a lot.
And they do play chess a lot.
Having said that, I find Sabretooth, as we're talking about villains, I find Sabretooth is a bit lacking as a character.
Yeah. He's just supposed to be the muscle, I guess, and that's it.
Which is too bad. I mean, especially when you see X-Men Origins Wolverine, which is sort of a mess of a movie, but Sabretooth is the most interesting thing in it.
Yeah, him and his relationship with Wolverine is the best thing.
Toad, I'm okay with, but he is a little bit sidelined as well.
Yeah, I know.
He's there for the martial arts.
Yeah, pretty much. So he gets a job done.
But I mean, he does get to play a little bit, even though it's not on paper, it's not in the screenplay, he's not really given space, his demeanor and everything is very much like the comic book character, though. He's a little bit of a wisecracking jerkwad, and he does that. He has that sort of kind of thing going for him.
Indeed.
And that's all in the acting. And
well, Toad got fried by, Storm. That's interesting.
with the best Joss Whedon line ever.
I know. That he blames the actors on why it wasn't good.
Which, in fairness, he might be half right on this. Yeah. Halle Berry, she is sleepwalking through this thing.
She had that Oscar at that point, right? She probably thought this movie was beneath her. So it's something for me to make big money, and it'll be all good. In the deleted scene, there's a scene where she does that accent. Where the hell is she from? That accent is just so weird. That it's a scene about her talking to Rogue and explaining about mutants stuff and stuff like that. But it's no, that accent is just too weird. They just had to cut it out of the movie completely.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing to sort of highlight the fact that Aurora Monroe is from somewhere in Africa, or as the cartoons always say, from Africa, as if that was helpful.
Yes. It's a pretty small continent, I find, though, having rewatching it, because I know this movie almost by heart, a lot of questions come to your mind, just stuff that, you think, how does that work exactly? I'm not quite sure how everybody knew that Rogue was in Alberta. Also, it's great, Rogue knows that she has some problems because she touched her boyfriend and he went into a coma. I'm not quite sure how she knows that she can absorb mutant powers, though.
Here's the thing. I'm of the firm belief that characters exist off-screen as well as on-screen. And I think it's reasonable to assume that while she was on the run, she must have made more mistakes with her touching people. And so it would have allowed her to, A, maybe discover a little bit more about what it is that her power is.
Okay.
And B, would have allowed Magneto to track her just by following headlines of oh, there's that person in a coma again.
I guess.
And follow the comas,
Okay, that makes sense. Rogue's been super traumatized, so the first thing he does, back to school. Just give him a few days to acclimated or something, but no, it's all good.
No, but she'll be around people she
Yeah.
knows, and like it's actually it might be a very constructive activity. I'm not of the belief that depressed people or hurt people should isolate themselves. I think that only makes
Okay.
things worse.
I guess.
Like Pyro and Iceman are already pining for her, so she should be fine.
Yeah, bad Pyro. That they had to recast for the second one.
It's, I like to call him strangely younger but taller Pyro. That reminds me of one of these important lines that everybody misinterprets. But at one point, they're like chained up in the Statue of Liberty,
Yeah.
and Magneto is like, "Aha, I got you now, X-Men." And then Cyclops going like, "Storm, use your power to do this." And again, another sign of the screenplay always apologizing.
Yeah.
Fucking X-Men cannot tell people what to do without explaining how it works.
Yeah.
It's like, use your electricity to fry him. It's like, you should just say Storm, bolt him. Like, it's
Yeah.
like, speak like a normal person.
That's a good point.
But anyway, and then Magneto goes like, electrocute me in a superconductor? I thought you went to school.
In a conductive sphere. I thought you lived at the school, though, which is even better. But yeah, because there cannot be any currents inside a conductor. So, yeah. He's right, though.
He is right, but a lot of people going like, yeah, it's because everybody's going to be electrocuted. It's like, no, that's
No.
because nothing will happen.
Exactly. Unless she can shoot the electricity herself, which we haven't seen, but we've seen her drop from the sky. Yeah, he's inside the sphere. He's completely protected. The same reason why you're perfectly fine in a thunderstorm in your car. A lot of people think it's because you have rubber wheels and the rubber wheels protect you. That has nothing to do with it. It's because you're inside a metal conductor. You cannot have any electric fields inside the shell. It's basically basic E&M. So you're safe, and that's the only thing.
No, the special effects also I have problems with. They haven't aged well, but I think even for the time it looks a little bit awkward. The wire foo is really, really, really stilted.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to make people fly. I don't know.
Well, I mean, like Storm sort of like awkwardly levitating, I'm fine with.
Okay.
The same thing with Magneto, because he's riding magnetic waves, he's not actually flying. So I'm all cool with that, but it's more like Mystique's like wire foo where she climbs on ceilings and walls and stuff. It looks like Bryan Singer trying to do The Matrix and not quite succeeding.
And I don't know what Toad spat in Jean Grey's face, but it looked edible and not dangerous at all.
You know what it looked like? It looked like those that slime that used to come with some He-Man accessories.
Yes.
That's what it looked like. To me.
Yes, I agree.
And speaking of toys from our past, the X-Jet, or Blackbird if you read the comics,
Yeah.
looks suspiciously like it was rendered by an N64.
It looks like they were going to play Star Fox, shooting triangles and squares.
Yeah, it really does. But at the same time, I think it's a sign that they put more budget in the casting than in the special effects, which is a decision I actually overall approve. I really like the casting.
Yeah. And okay, so if the movie makes it sort of good, you can get more money next time to get the same cast, because you probably had them signed for cheapo the first time, so they had to do the other movies for cheapo as well, and then you can just improve on the special effects.
Yeah, and I think that's what they did. I mean, like certainly you look at X2, the special effects were fantastic. So
yeah.
That seems to be what they did. They focused on the cast, and I think that was a great decision. I think James Marsden as Cyclops was an unlikely choice, but an inspired one. He's really good in that role.
Yeah.
Jean Grey looks weirdly older and taller than him, so that's a little bit weird. But
yeah,
she has a funny story that she told in an interview. Because she took the role really seriously. She got to the role of Jean Grey. It's like, it's a comic book. It's like, oh, it's a comic book. How long has it been around? It's 1963. Oh shit! I better play this character right. I'm going to do my homework. So she walked into a comic book store. It's like, hey, I'm looking for comics that feature Dr. Jean Grey, because that's the name on her screenplay. She doesn't know anything about comics, and she got like the stupid comic book guy, prototypical, who went like, "That's Jean Grey, not a doctor, stupid."
Oh my God.
And I'm like, really? When a supermodel enters your store,
Yeah.
that's the way you're gonna treat her when she's just asking a legitimate question? Like, if she was being a bitch, you can treat her the way you want, but she's asking a legitimate question.
Yeah. And, well, maybe that was his way of impressing her, by showing his knowledge and being uber condescending, because that's how nerds prove their superiority, I'm the alpha male here, I know more than you. You want to sleep with me? That's terrible, but it's good that she did her homework. You know?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And of course, the one that's the ones I like is Patrick Stewart was a shoo-in for Professor X. I
Yeah.
love that casting. The minute they announced it, I was like, of course,
Of course.
And Ian McKellen, he's a Bryan Singer favorite, but he's really good as Magneto.
Yeah, a good decade for him. Magneto and then Gandalf. Two really cool characters. He's a nerd icon now.
He really is. It's true. He is. And he adds that sort of light-heartedness that wasn't necessarily inherent in the character, where he's just sort of like mildly condescending toward everybody, which is kind of fun.
I know.
Mystique looks gorgeous,
Yes.
and she's good. Like I like the actress, just generally speaking. But the real star, let's face it, is Hugh Jackman as Wolverine.
Yeah.
And to think that he was a last-minute replacement is amazing because he embodies the role so much that I can't even think of anyone else anymore in the role.
I know. I think their first choice was Kirk Russell, who, wanted too much money.
Oh, that was way back in the early 90s.
Okay.
After that, it was that guy who plays the bad guy in Mission Impossible 2. I forget his name.
Okay.
So he was a last-minute replacement.
Wow.
And it's that lucked out.
And now
because
he had to get in shape like super fast, I'm guessing. Because
Yeah,
that
he
role
did,
has
yeah.
been crazy.
He's so good in it, but what I find intriguing, and this is where I'm going to get into more comic booky, nerdy stuff, because I'm a big X-Men fan.
Yeah.
Been reading this since I was 13. He's not really Wolverine. He's sort of a mix between Wolverine and Gambit.
I guess.
He's more of a lone wolf, debonair, snarky dude. That's a little bit more Gambit-y,
Yeah.
Whereas Wolverine, as written in the comics before the movies, because then after the movie came out, they sort of changed Wolverine to sort of act more and more like the movie version.
Yeah.
He was more of a, frustrated 13-year-old, I guess.
Yeah, that's the way you would explain that, would describe it, yeah. No respect for authority, do what he wants. Tough guy, pretty much. That's about it.
Yeah, so he's a very, very different character when you think about it.
Yeah.
And I find that they changed a lot of the characters, which unfortunately becomes sort of a trend in the rest of the movies, where it's less justified than in this movie. But Rogue is not so much Rogue as she is Kitty Pryde with Rogue's powers.
I guess. No, casting that little girl there, you knew she was not going to be Rogue to begin with, It would have been weird having her act like a Southern Belle,
Yeah. All right, okay, let's give our one-sentence review of every X-Men sequel, okay? Because there's a lot of them, so we'll have to go fast, right? Okay, so X2 X-Men United.
It was the best movie of the series.
I really liked it too. It's a lot of fun. It's sort of Bryan Singer, sort of like, okay, with like the awkward exposition out of the way, let's tell a story.
It wasn't even, and the crazy thing is, it wasn't even awkward exposition, but it's just like, hey, these characters are built so we can spend even more time on the story, which is like spectacular. You had one of the best scenes when Iceman goes back home and like his brother doesn't even want him there because he's a mutant, and he just learned about that. I was just like, oh my god, this is sad.
Yeah, and I think the crowning achievement of that movie isn't the Nightcrawler scene, which is spectacular.
Yeah.
Isn't all of the cool action and twists and everything. It's that scene where Magneto talks to Pyro, and Pyro joins the Brotherhood, and you're like, right on, brother. I can't blame you for this.
I know. He's had like a very, very crummy couple of days thanks to humans. He's like, fuck these humans. And yeah, completely...
It's tragic, and you understand why it's happening, and it's a perfect scene. It really is.
Yes, it is.
All right, X-Men: The Last Stand.
There's a cure for good movies, so they all have to band together to stop the cure.
I don't like that movie either. I don't want to. I feel like I'd only be repeating what we already said in our Last Stand review, which I'll repost so that everybody can listen to it. There you go.
Yeah.
One thing I will add, though, because I didn't mention it in the Last Stand review we did. What the fuck, Brett Ratner? Every X-Men movie at that point started with a Patrick Stewart voiceover. You dropped that. What the fuck?
I know.
I really like the Patrick Stewart voiceover.
He has an awesome voice.
He really does. It's like, evolution. Every million of years. I was like, oh, cool. I'm so into this. And then it sort of, he highlights the themes of the movie, and then the movie starts, and what to look for in the movie in terms of what the message is. And then the third one doesn't have that. Is it because you didn't know what the message of your movie was, Brett Ratner? Is it? Is it?
He's probably just thinking like, voiceovers are for fags, so he didn't.
Okay, for those of you wondering, like, this is not Nick using derogatory language because he feels that way. It's because that's sort of a paraphrase of what Brett Ratner actually said in one point.
Yeah, he was talking about rehearsal, but he used the same exact end of the sentence.
Yeah.
Okay, so
like,
Google it if you don't believe me. I just used that, as
don't send us letters. This was meant to make fun of Brett Ratner, not gay people.
So after that, we have X-Men Origins, Wolverine.
Yeah, you know what? I've warmed up to it in the years. It's like, look, it's a mess in terms of its production. It was during the writer's strike, but it still managed to tell more or less the story of how Wolverine joined Weapon X, got his powers, and then got an amnesia bullet in his noggin and has a brother.
I still love that amnesia bullet expression. An amnesia bullet. I mean, I like watching the movie and seeing, which scenes can I cut to make this less of a mess? And, it's a fun game to play. It's like, no, this is useless, this is stupid. She's not completely useless as a character. He's like...
Yeah, because Gavin Hood is actually a good storyteller, so the scenes themselves tell a nice story in and of themselves.
Just imagine that the last bad guy is not called Deadpool, and you're fine with the movie.
Oh, yeah, that's a wasted opportunity right there. Oh, my. No, and I love Victor in that movie. Liev Schreiber is awesome, just in general, and that role, he does really some great things with it.
He did gain a lot of weight for that role, I think.
Yeah, he bulked up for it. Yeah. X-Men First Class. I liked it a lot, actually.
It was spectacular.
Yeah.
The only thing I really didn't quite like was, like, the Ice Queen there, and
White Queen.
Yeah, White Queen. She was completely terrible as an actress, and he's like, you're kind of useless here.
Everybody says that, and I honestly don't see it. I hear she's terrible in Mad Men, but since I don't watch Mad Men, it doesn't affect me. I won't say she's good or anything, but she was there for me.
She was there, and the thing is, her role in the beginning was to shield, Shaw from, telepaths.
Yeah.
She got completely replaced by a helmet. Okay, her role could have been completely removed, and you could have had the helmet on for the whole time. She was completely useless.
My criticism of the movie would be that everything regarding Charles Xavier and Magneto and Mystique works. This is great stuff. And everything regarding the rest of the First Class is so damn forgettable.
Yes.
The Wolverine.
Did not see that one. So.
Loved it. Okay. What I love about it is that it's a superhero movie without stakes. It's very contained. The story matters to Wolverine, but not to anyone else.
Okay.
And it was refreshing. I was like, oh, thank God. I am so tired of world-shattering stakes. Wolverine's in this story. The story matters to him. He's fighting for his life and the life of the people he cares for, and no one else.
Nice. So not saving the world, nothing.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And I dug the crap out of that.
Still selfish. Come on.
Which is okay. I'm fine with that. Wolverine doesn't have to save the world every 5 minutes.
That's true. He's surely enough that he wouldn't want to anyway. So.
Yeah, exactly. And they introduced Yukio from the comic books, and they nailed her character. This is what I want to see.
So there's porn?
Huh?
There's porn in the movie? They nailed her character.
Oh my God, wow.
And now we're
at Days of Future Past. Yeah.
We're looking forward to that.
Yeah. I'm so about it. We've seen the trailer.
Yeah.
Obviously. And you know what I realized is, everybody made a big deal about Fassbender giving a really good performance as Magneto in First Class.
Yeah.
And people sort of just didn't mention James McAvoy as Charles Xavier.
Yeah.
I love him as Charles Xavier. I had that reaction when I saw First Class, but it was confirmed to me when I watched this trailer for Days of Future Past, and the line that stays with me that I want to say every chance I get is, I don't want your future! I don't know, I'm just like, this is so cool, I love this actor.
Wow. It would sound cooler if Patrick Stewart said it, I'm sorry.
Actually, you know what? I disagree. It's one of those things where I'm watching the trailer, I'm going, oh, the old X-Men are back, that's fun. Meh. And then they show the young X-Men from the 70s at this point. And you're like, oh, now I'm interested. Now I want to see the movie.
Interesting. X3 really mess with your brain, like in the old ones. Now it's good that they get both casts, so the budget on the acting must be insane.
Yeah.
I mean, you thought Avengers had a heavy, heavy
Yeah,
price tag.
well, admittedly, I have a feeling that Robert Downey Jr.'s cachet alone probably covers the entire cast from Days of Future Past, in
All right,
fairness.
good point. And the new guys, they probably had, the old guys, the old guys, which are actually the young, were so confusing.
Wow, what are you talking about?
The original cast
Yes.
is what I meant. They probably had to come at a price as well because it's probably not in their contract to do when the third one ended and it was like, okay, we're starting it over. I think the contract probably expired, so they probably had to pay a few penny for him. But the new guys, they probably got cheap. Imagine you get Jennifer Lawrence for cheap because she signed when she was like a nobody.
Yeah, right? She signed before Winter's Bone came
Yeah.
out and gave her her Oscar nomination.
Yeah.
So, and that's even before Hunger Games made her a superstar. So.
Yeah, so I was like, what am I getting paid for this movie? $25,000? What the hell?
Hey, if she's wise, she understands that acting is the privilege. If you love acting,
Yeah.
you get paid for it. Like, don't do it for free.
Yeah, I know. That's still a huge pay cut for her now, which is probably, I would just like to see her face when she sees her checks, like, what the hell?
I know, and it's probably her most uncomfortable role too, Mystique, because she has to get painted in blue and the naked factor. I understand she has a bodysuit out now, but all of that cannot be comfortable for her. It's probably her most demanding role, just physically.
Yeah. But yeah, it's, just the cast itself. Even if, you don't know what the story is, just look at the cast and I need to go see this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Cast is great.
Yeah, no, and Days of Future Past, I mean, those of you who read comics probably know what the story is. It's one of those iconic 80s comic book stories. It's the comic book story that changed the way we make comics. That and the Phoenix storyline, which was loosely adapted in Last Stand, but don't let that affect your judgment of Days of Future Past. It's such a great story. Granted, they managed to find a way to shove Wolverine in the middle of it, which I'm less than enthused about. Whatever. I like Hugh Jackman.
Wasn't Sabretooth in Days of Future Past?
No.
Really?
No. Next week, we are talking about Sleeping Beauty.
Oh my god. That's an old one.
That's a really old one. Classic Disney movie. They're doing Maleficent, which is sort of the Wicked to Sleeping Beauty. But whatever.
Okay.
Until then, if you want to share your comments, your love, hatred, ambivalence, general not caringness toward X-Men. Actually, if you don't care, just don't bother.
No, bother. We like when you write to us, even if you don't care. So, write us.
You can write us at mail@idiomatic.com or post a comment at idiomatic.com. We're also on Twitter at Idiomatic, on Facebook, on iTunes. If you could write us an iTunes review and like us on Facebook, it would help us get the support to generate content on a regular basis. Otherwise, I will have no choice but to push for a Nick Registration Act.
I'm already registered. I voted last week.